Katherine Warnock, thank you so much for sitting with me today and chatting with me. I'm super excited to just get into your story, honestly.
Yeah, we're going to have fun.
Well, first, tell me how you grew up. Like, did you grow up in a Christian home? What was your childhood like? Tell me more about that.
So I grew up right outside of Detroit, Michigan. I was born in Livonia, Michigan. My mom's Cuban and Welsh, and my dad's 100% Italian.
Nice.
So I was like thoroughbred Catholic on both sides.
Okay, yeah.
So the extent of it was, you know, for example, I did communion, and then it just kind of was like, we'll go on Easter, we'll go on Christmas. But then I just went to college to become a teacher, and the first friend I made, his name is Indamiso Mafu, and he's from Africa. Unbeknownst to me, he was this on-fire Christian, so he invited me to church, and thoroughbred Catholic girl. He invites me to an all-black church. I'm the only white girl in there. Instead of hymns and, you know, structure, there was demonstrative dance and demonstrative worship and people speaking in funny languages, and I just like, part of me was just appalled, but my spirit, what I now know is my spirit bearing witness to the Holy Spirit in the room, just was finally home.
Fast forward a little bit, you graduate college, you become a high school teacher. What happened?
At the time, I was desperate. Like, as soon as the school day would end, I would head home and I would just be on my face in front of God for hours. So next thing I know, I find this wild woman, Heidi Baker. I literally ordered a cassette tape because someone told me she's doing a missions school in Mozambique, Africa. I listened to her tape and I was undone. And I was like, I'm going. I literally moved there thinking this is the rest of my life.
Wow.
And it was then that I had two prophetic words that were very boldly spoken over me. One, Stacy Campbell came and she had a team with her. And one of her ministry team leaders got up saying, there are Josephs in the room today. And I'm about 15 feet away from her, 20 feet away from her, and she just locks eyes with me. And she starts screaming at me and pointing, you're a Joseph! And I just start crying. And then it was shortly thereafter, one of Jill Austin's intern, her name was Anna Lee, we're alongside a dirt road in Mozambique, walking back to the base. And she just starts, boom, like thunderbolts from heaven, like, you are called to Hollywood. And so I remember I went immediately back to my bunk, and I was not prepared for the wrestle that would ensue for about the next 12 hours. And God's just showing me, if you go, for about 10 hours, if you go, this is what will happen. And he was showing me just the underbelly, the dark parts of Hollywood, or what it would feel like as a Christian to be in a largely non-Christian environment, and just all the things you would expect. And I just was, God, I will not go. I will not go. And then for like the last 2 hours, he said, but if you go, this is what will happen. And he showed me the fruit. And the moment he showed me the first ounce of fruit, I just went, I'm all in. What do you need from me?
You obviously had a prophetic word that you were a Joseph, but there were some prisons that you had to be in and go through, in and out of. What were some of those prisons for you in your own life?
I think we so often forget that God's style of training involves a lot of prisons. And it's not because he's a bad God. It's quite the opposite. It's because he is desperate for me to survive when I'm thrown in the deep end of the ocean, that I know I have my roots in him. My character is refined. And I think so often we as Christians undercut the preparation. We undercut the Joseph prison season because we all quickly want to be that number 2 in charge.
Wow.
The thing about me is that those 14 years, because it was 14 years of just, I was laid off 7 times. I had $9 left in the bank countless times. Betrayal upon betrayal. Been asked to do things that completely go against every fiber of my being. I mean, you name it. I've ran the gauntlet. One really stands out that I'm most passionate about. My husband and I had been married for 5 years at the time, and our marriage was falling apart. We were calmly talking about divorce at the dinner table.
Wow.
And when you're calmly talking about divorce, you know you're in real dangerous territory. We were both working in the film industry at the time, so I was in the natural, on the surface, looked like I was thriving, great career woman, had my stuff together. But behind closed doors, I was absolutely falling apart. God was faithful to show me it's shame is what is crippling your life right now. And the fruit of it in my life was perfectionism and control and, subconscious manipulation. And I couldn't apologize. I just couldn't admit failure in any way, shape, or form. And it got to such a place that it would probably have been classified as a mental breakdown. I remember vividly one night just being tormented, just rocking back and forth in the dark corner of my bedroom, like punching myself in the face. And I'm this Christian leader. This is supposed to be happening. My life was completely falling apart. And so the Holy Spirit was so faithful. He said, do you trust me? Do you trust me to lead you through this? Do you trust me to show you how to unravel shame from your life? Before I knew it, I went from feeling like I was naked in God's presence to just being able to boldly be there. I have permission to be in process. I have permission to be messy.
Wow. Yeah.
You just asked for my yes. Had God not brought me through that tormenting 2.5 years, which thankfully me pressing into that healing saved my marriage, and it's a thriving, beautiful marriage. We've been married 17 years now.
That's awesome.
I can now sit in boardrooms. I can sit in rooms with billionaires. I can sit with people that want to like literally kill me because they're so angry, or whatever the various emotions might be that all happen in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I go, oh, if shame were operating in my life right now, I would be having a panic attack, or I'd be trying to ingratiate myself to get a promotion, or you name it. I would subconsciously be trying to prove my value. But I don't need to do that anymore.
Well, God has taken you so many different places. Before you came to The Chosen, I mean, you were in the fashion industry. You were working for like huge name brand companies, working for branding and strategy. I mean, what are some moments that stand out to you the most of God just doing what God does?
My first big break in Hollywood, I was a receptionist at a film studio. Even how I got the job is a complete miracle. And the head of the film studio is exiting. He's French, and he whips around, and he's like, Katherine, do you know how to do script coverage? I just knew that I could figure it out. And I said, I can do that, no problem. I literally taught myself, worked kind of through the night. He had 2 script coverage on his desk the next morning. From that moment, he just started throwing more scripts at me. Wow. Next thing I know, I rate one a 9 out of 10. They end up getting it over to Sony because they take it so seriously. Wow. Sony ends up acquiring it. They rate it the same. Before I knew it, I was promoted to creative director. I was in charge of CGI artists. I was in charge of a whole team of screenwriters. And I had no idea what I was doing. None. But I trusted Jesus to expand my talents. And from that moment on, it's been story after story like that.
That's absolutely amazing. You end up working with Roma Downey and Mark Burnett. And then eventually that led you to The Chosen.
Yes. I had a friend say, hey, I actually was offered a consulting gig at MGM on this Ben-Hur campaign. I can't do it. I actually think you'd be a brilliant fit. I worked that campaign, and before I knew it, they opened up a full-time job for me, and I became the head of faith and family content. And so how I came to be with The Chosen, years ago, the pilot episode came across my desk. And in this industry, as a producer, you'll watch something for 5 seconds, you know what you have, and you know if it's for you or not. So it was really notable that a minute in, I was still watching, 2 minutes in, I'm still 5 minutes in, 10 minutes, I'm tearing up now. I watched the entire thing in one sitting, and I was properly crying by the end of it. And so I immediately emailed Mark and Roma, and I said, you have to acquire this. It's going to take over the world. To their great credit, they immediately tried to acquire it. It unfortunately didn't work out. Skip ahead, years later, the pandemic. I just had my 3rd baby. My husband is like, you need to watch this show on the app. I watched it, and it wasn't until 2.5 episodes in, I was like, it dawned on me. I was like, this is the shepherd.
Wow.
This is it.
Yeah.
So it's now called The Chosen. And I'm like, okay. Next thing I know, a number of people start sending me a job opening for vice president position at The Chosen. Here I am. Isn't that wild?
It really is. You are now the vice president of original content for The Chosen. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis for you?
So I get to help develop out what the future of The Chosen will look like. I get to be a really key part of that. That's thrilling. I get to dive into ancillary content. So Christmas special, Unfiltered Gen Z Reacts to The Chosen. Yes. I'm doing a number of documentary series with the cast. And I oversee huge production elements like Feeding of the 5,000 or Sermon on the Mount and theatrical releases, theatrical premieres, Chosen Con. Last, I oversee cast relations and PR.
Okay, I love that. This is my last question. Is it worth saying yes to God?
My gosh, yes.
Is it hard?
It's excruciating. Life will never get easier, and that's fine.
Wow, yeah.
But to be enraptured by such joy in the midst of hardship, to be, no matter what you're going through, to feel the overwhelming presence of Jesus. I'll go anywhere. I could be a waitress tomorrow. I'm fine. Prisons and palaces smell the same to me, Jesus, because you're faithful. And I'm convinced that's where Joseph got. He got to a place where the prison and the palace smelled exactly the same. And God's like, now I could use you. You can be in agony. You can be frustrated. You can be angry. You can want none of what he has on offer. But are you going to say yes?